Well, today we're making a Scarecrow themed garden flag for the front porch of the dollhouse. Stay tuned and see how fun and easy this project is. We're going to start with a clip I filmed a while back on how to form the flag, and then we'll go on to painting our flag for this theme. Stay tuned. Alright, in preparation for making our garden flag, I've cut my piece of Ultra Hold Heat and Bond to a 1-inch square, and I've cut a piece of 100% white cotton muslin to a piece that's 1 inch by 3 inches. And I've got a wooden board to protect my table and a piece of printer paper on top of that. I know it's going to be hard to see, but white on white, but I don't want to stain my fabric. So I'm going to take this, I've already pressed this flat, and I've got my little craft iron. This is just a little tulip craft iron. You could use your regular iron that you use for pressing clothes with. This just saves me getting out my ironing board and all of that stuff, and it protects my good iron from any things that might be on my crafting project. So I'm going to take this, follow the directions on the brand of fusible web you get. I'll talk more about the fusible web on the blog post, so be sure and hop over there and get a more thorough explanation of the steps here. We do this every month, so I want to kind of go over it quickly today so we don't spend all our time. Now I'm folding this in half. I put that 1-inch square right at the end, one end of my flag, my strip. The hardest part of this whole process is many times peeling that paper backing. This reveals this shiny part, which is fabric glue. It's a heat-activated glue that will hold our fabric strip together. At this point, don't worry about these little threads hanging off. Those will be sealed once this is finished. Just using my iron to kind of press it down. I'll do a more thorough job of ironing off camera, but I want to give you the idea. Now this needs to cool, and we can move over to the work tile and start our design process. All right, now that we have our flag base formed, we're going to start our painting. But before we start painting, I have a circle template. You don't have to have a circle template. Anything that you can make a nice 3/4 inch circle with, whether it's a piece of punched paper, whatever. And I'm drawing this approximately in the middle. It doesn't have to be perfectly in the middle, just about the middle. And do that on both sides. I'm going to do the other side off camera so I can take photos as I go. And then we're going to paint, and I'm doing this because I don't want to have to try to cover my background color with the color of our Scarecrow's face. So what I've got here is some bright blue paint from Apple Barrel. Put a little bit out on just a little plastic container. That helps me keep the mess down a little bit. And I've got a brush. And what I'm going to do, I'm not going to stay perfectly around that, but I'm using that pencil line as a guide. This way I can have a nice bright blue background color and not have to try to cover that bright blue with this color. The other colors I'm using, it'll be fine. I just don't want my Scarecrow to have a blue face. So I'm trying to stay under camera. And I find a flat angled brush does make this a little bit easier, but use whatever brush works best for you. And like I said, I am going to do the other side. I'm going to do this on both sides. And this paint will need to dry. It'll need to dry on this side before I turn it over to do the back side. And then it will also need to dry, both sides will need to be dry before we come back and start painting our Scarecrow. So I'm going to wrap my brush up with a wet wipe, and after I get the other side painted, I'll come back and we can start adding a Scarecrow to this. So I'll be right back. All right, our blue paint has dried, and now I have some vanilla cream from Anita's and a pretty small, short brush. This one is, let's see if I can figure out, this is a number 2 filbert. And I'm going to take a chance on doing it out of the lid. I think my paint is dried completely, because I don't want this to be stark white. I do want paint on it. But I like the filbert because it's got a nice firm end on it, so I don't make as many errors. And we're going to add other design elements to this as we go, so you don't have to be perfect. If I had more paint in the jar, I would have put some out on a little palette, but I am almost out of this color. All right. Now I'm going to let this dry, then I'm going to flip it over and do the other side. And by the way, I didn't mention, you do want to try and get those two circles lined up back to back so that your flag looks good from both sides. So I'm once again going to wrap my brush in a wet wipe. I'm going to cap my paint off. When this side dries off camera, I'll do the other side, and then we can move on to our next step. So I'll be right back. All right, my cream color paint is dry, and I've got the same brush. I cleaned it, and I'm going to use it to add the shirt area. And for that, I've got a dark red here. It's Anita's, called in the color Wine. And I'm going to just pull out just a little bit. And again, I'll have to do this on both sides. But the combination of the dark red and the blue underneath is going to make the shirt a very dark, rich, kind of brownish red, which is what I was after. And this is just a really simple shape. A little more paint than I'm getting in there. And you might need to put 2 coats on of this since we are covering the bright blue, but I like how that looks, and I think it shows up pretty well up there. So I am going to let this side dry. Oh, and make sure that you've got the fold of your flag up here. Double check that before you start painting this step. But I will let this dry. I'm going to wrap my paintbrush up again. I'll come back. I'll probably do a second coat on this, and then I'll turn it over and do the same thing on the other side. And when that is all dry, I'll come back and we'll start adding our hat, and then we can do some details. So I'll be back when this dries. All right, our little shirt area is dry. So now I have this color. This is Buttered Yam from Anita's. I love this for fall stuff. I just think it is the nicest little color. So I'm just going to make a really simple hat. I'll put a dot there. And this is a slightly transparent, kind of semi-opaque color, so I will have to put a second coat on, but that's okay. And remember, it's a Scarecrow. He's not supposed to be perfect. But his hat is just basically a triangle shape with a little brim. This has all been really simple shapes. A circle, a little kind of moon shaped, and now a triangle with the edge. And once again, I'll do a second coat off camera if I decide I need it, and then I'll do the other side. And when those are done, we can start adding details and make this look more like a Scarecrow. So I'll be right back. All right, so all that paint dried overnight, so now I've got my white paint pen, and this one happens to be a medium tip. And I'm going to put just 2 white dots. And they're not going to show a lot on the face, but we're going to add to this later. There. You may not even, yeah, you can see it on camera. Now I have some vivid orange. I kind of looked up different Scarecrow faces, and I don't see a toothpick, but I have a wooden skewer. Normally I would use a toothpick for this, but I forgot to grab one. So I've got some vivid orange paint, and I'm going to just make a little triangle. And now that paint will need to dry, and then we'll come back and use some black to add details. But in the meantime, I'm going to take that same tiny brush I used yesterday and some flag red paint. And I'm going to add a little detail to his shirt. And I'm not going to put a second coat on here. It's kind of transparent, and that's kind of what I want. I just want I'm going to put a little more here. And this is just supposed to look like he's got a collar on his shirt. So now those paints need to dry, and when those get dry, let's add a flower to his hat while we're at it. Let's just add a really, in fact, I'm going to use the end. Because I think our Scarecrow would have a little flower up on his hat. There. So I'm going to let those paints dry. I'll do the other side off camera, and then when this paint is all dry, I'll come back and we can add some detail lines with some black paint. So I'll be back in a sec. All right, so those features are dry now. And now we're going to add, I have a fine-tipped paint pen, which I forgot to prime, which I'm going to kind of put some a black dot on top of each of those 2 white dots. Then I have just some black acrylic paint in the lid here. This is from old bottle of Anita's. And I'm going to use a toothpick, because this is going to be way easier to get really fine lines. And you guys can do much better details on yours, because you aren't going to be trying to keep it under camera and trying to hurry to get this done. So I want to see yours. I want to see the Scarecrow flags you make. And I have much better luck with the toothpick, making really fine lines. And you can add more details. The other thing I'm going to do at this point is I've got some bright yellow. In fact, it's called bright yellow. And I'm going to just use the skewer here that I used for that. And I'm going to add some yellow to that center of that flower. All right, we're going to let this paint dry, and when this gets dry, I'm going to come back and add some straw coming up from under his hat and around the bottom of his neck area and stuff like that. So let's let this dry, and I'll be right back. All right, I think my paint from the last step is dry, so now I have some folk art in Moon Yellow, and that same little tiny brush I've been using. And what I'm going to do, and you can add as much or as little of each step as you want. Kind of add just some little bits. Some of it this way. I think I'm going to go back with a toothpick and add more. I'm going to use a toothpick for more of this. That is just making my line a little heavier than I want. That's better. Oh, come on. There we go. And I think that's good. So I'm going to let this dry, and once the paint is dry, I'll go put it on the front of the dollhouse, and we'll move over there and take a look at it on the flag bracket. So I'll see you there in just a sec. Well, there is our Scarecrow flag in place on the front porch of the dollhouse. I love how he turned out. I think he is really adorable. Be sure and check the blog post for photos and more information. I want to thank you for watching today. If you enjoy my content and haven't subscribed, I encourage you hit that subscription button and the notification bell so you know when I put up a new video. If you like the video, hit the like button, leave me a comment. What kinds of themes would you like to see in future projects? And I will talk to you next time. Bye.